Hello and most welcome to H8 1885. Ooh, we're just a mere 15 away from 1900. Amazing. It's going quickly. We will continue with Wittgenstein's private language investigation by the Venerable Francis Y. Lynn. Last time we came to an important turn, I would say, in the understanding of PLA, and that it does refer both to the inside of the organism, so to speak, and the outsideness, what we usually refer to, the world, the physical. There is a PLA referring both at both sides at the same time. Both are under investigation, so to speak. Without an observer, there cannot be a world, and vice versa. So now what has happened is Wittgenstein parallels quantum mechanics in a very good way. Yeah, you found one. Good thing there. Physical objects endure, are stable, and they provide us with constancies against which we can isolate them and sort them into time. That cannot be done without a criterion. It will not happen by itself. It needs a doing. This is, of course, the Klein bottle as well. Inside needs outside, and outside is in need of the inside. In Morse text, it was the mouth and the anus, the skin reaching out to the outsideness, that made it possible for us to discern, to have criterions. Only in this wondrous flow from the inside to outside and vice versa do we have criterion, understanding, and meaning. Without that, we are blind to differences. Differences are not like in Kalle mentioned Saussure, connected to the S. They're not simply out there. Neither are they simply in there. They need their differences. And how does the flow of differences gets established? Well, it's the wave from in to out and out to in. One could say actually that this inside-outside flow is the flow of telling correctness. It's the movement. Swiss engineer and scientist Pfeiffer says everything is stored, so to speak, or is present in the movement. To have memory, there needs to be an outside. We can continue where we left off. We were now going into Stern Risley after having a bit with McGinn. The above interpretation assumes that S refers to a sensation. It is just that the direst, bare act of introspection cannot establish such a connection. Grove's interpretation, as we have seen in the previous subsection, is different. On his view, the direst original baptism cannot determine which aspect of the sensation S refers to. And in order for S to have a clear meaning, there must be a practice of using the word. So Stroud also offers a new stage setting interpretation. He appeals to PI 257 and 261 to argue that the stage setting of S is absent and that there are problems with calling S a sensation or anything else. The no stage setting interpretation also face the memory challenge. For the sake of argument, let us suppose that the use of a word in public language require a practice. Then why can't the private diarist establish a practice of using S? If the diarist at T2 can remember clearly and correctly that at T1 he associated S with S1, that being the sensation rather than any other aspect of it. Then it seems that he can compare S2 with S1 to tell whether it is also of the type S, and that in this way he can set up a practice of using S. And 3, an alternative interpretation. All the interpretations discussed in the preceding section are plagued by the memory challenge. None of them explains why the diarist cannot use his private names correctly in a short period if his memory is reliable for that period. It is also interesting to note that the expression remembering the connection right is understood differently by different commentators. To memory skeptics and peers, this expression means identifying future sensations with the initial one. To the other commentators, it means remembering the meaning of S. It goes for Kenny, Acker, Stroud, McKinn. Second comes remembering the rule right, which is Candish. Or remembering the correlation between S and a sensation, which is Canfield and Rice. What does the expression really mean by Wittgenstein? It seems that a crucial step towards a correct interpretation of Wittgenstein's remarks on private language is to get a precise understanding of the expression remembering the connection right. I shall therefore start with a discussion of what Wittgenstein means by that important expression. In PL 258, Wittgenstein writes, 3. Remembering the connection right. In PI 258, Wittgenstein writes, but I impress it on myself can only mean this process brings it about that I remember the connection right in the future. The text shows that the connection is between the sign S and a certain sensation, which is introduced at the beginning of PI 258. Now, what does Wittgenstein mean by remembering the connection right in the future? Well, what could that mean? What do we get into then? In notes for lectures on private experience and sense data, I imagine it should be LPE hereafter. He provides a number of remarks pertaining to this question. Let us start with Wittgenstein's remark about the diary in LPE. But I could use language just for making entries in my diary. Without ever having learned it, I could have invented a name for the particular color sensation, say the name red, and then use this name to note down whenever I had that color sensation. Sensation, echo. Where are you, my echo? That means you would play a private language game with yourself. But let's see, how are we to describe this game? Christening? The words seeing red means a particular experience or a part experience are senseless unless we can follow them up by namely this. Pointing Or else they may say experiences as opposed to physical objects. But then this is grammar. Indeed, that is grammar. It's worth noting here that Wittgenstein's diarist here invents a color named red and writes it in the diary. Here red is obviously meant to be a private name, not a public name. Not a public name. Ha ha ha. In PI 258, Wittgenstein uses S instead of red. Maybe because he thinks that red is already a word in English. Which is a public language, and that S would be a better example of a word in a private language. Private. What do you say, Echo? Echo. So the diarist in PI 258 writes S when he feels a sensation of the type S.
Sensation.
Rather than red, when he has a certain colored experience, sensation.
Sensation.
Comparing the above remark in LPE with PI 258 with appropriate substitutions, we get the word S, the words S means a particular experience are senseless unless we can follow them up by, namely this, pointing.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Pointing. This means if the diarist as T2 says that he is feeling S again, he should be able to point to S2 and say, this is S. In other words, the diarist called S1 S. Now he should be able to point to S2 and also call it S.
S.
What this means is he should be able to correctly re-identify the sensation type S. S.
S.
I shall call this reading the re-identification reading. Two subsequent remarks in LPE support this reading. So he can be sure in his private way of what toothache means by having a private sensation.
Sensation.
Sensation. Sensation. Making sure that you know what seeing red means is good only if you can make use of this knowledge in a further case. Yeah, Wittgenstein uses both toothache
Ouch. Oh, toothache.
red to illustrate his point. The private diarist invents a name, for instance, toothache,
Toothache.
red or S, for his private sensation. The first of the above remarks questions whether the diarist can make sure what the name means through private ostension. The second of the above remarks states that for the diarist to claim that he knows the meaning of the private name, he must be able to use this knowledge in a further case. That is, he must be able to determine whether or not a future sensation is a toothache, red or S. The re-identification reading is strengthened by a further remark in LPE. But when you ask me, do you know what toothache is? I answer yes, after having brought before my mind a certain sensation. But how is this certain sensory characterization used? This remark means to say that you know the meaning of S. You must be able to characterize a particular sensation. For instance, S2 as S. A more explicit support for this reading comes from the following remark in LPE. In our private language game, we had, it seemed, given a name to an impression. 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 In order, of course, to use the name for this impression in the future.
Future. Future.
The definition, that is, should have determined on future occasions for what impression to use the name and for which not to use it.
Mm.
Now we've said that on certain occasions, after having given the definition, we did use the word, and on others we did not. But we describe these occasions only by saying that we had a certain impression. That is, we did not describe them at all. At all.
Uh,
The only thing that characterized them was that we used such and such words. What seemed to be a definition didn't play the role of a definition at all. What? It did not justify one subsequent use of the word. And all that remains of our private language game is therefore that I sometimes, without any particular reason, write the word red in my diary. That's it.
That I sometimes, without any particular reason, write it red in my diary.
Here, Wittgenstein states clearly that the diarist, having given S to a sensation, must be able to re-identify the future sensations as S or not as S. Thus then, in PI 258, Wittgenstein writes, but I impress it on myself can only mean this process brings it about that I remember the connection right in the future. What he means is that the diarist must be able to re-identify sensation types. Three, two, no criterion of correctness. Having established that remembering the connection right means re-identifying sensation types, let us proceed to discuss why Wittgenstein says, but in the present case, I have no criterion of correctness. That is why there is no criterion of correctness for the diarist to tell whether or not S2 or any other sensation after the initial baptism is S.
Yes.
Wittgenstein himself contrasts the ordinary case of re-identifying sensation types with a private diary case. In knowing what seeing red is, you seem to say to yourself, seeing red is this.
Seeing red is this.
You seem to give yourself a sample, but you don't, because the usual criteria for the sameness of the sample don't apply.
Don't apply.
Don't, no. I can say I call red always the same color, or whenever I explain red, I point to a sample of the same color.
Sample of the same color.
Consider the proposition. He makes sure what it means to him by. Would you say that the word had a meaning to him if it meant something else every time? And what is the criterion of the same color coming twice? That's a very good question.
What is the criteria of the same color twice?
If we describe a game which he plays with himself, is it relevant that he should use the word red for the same color in our sense? Or would we also call it a language game if he used it anyhow? Then what is the criterion for using it in the same way? Not merely the connection between same color and red. In these remarks, Wittgenstein states that in ordinary life one can call an object red by pointing at a red sample and say that both the sample and the object are red. In other words, there is a criterion of correctness, it being the sample. He then questions whether the private diarist can ascertain that two private sensations are both of the type red or S, and whether there is a criterion of correctness in this case. This was in the reading for 1885.
What happened?
Page is 269.
You want to leave it there? In this
Yes.
case. And case.
We have a glass of water and I'll come back in a second. There we go. We can go to page 267. And here already in the beginning, we get a clarification of great value. And it's the LPE that it would be called henceforth, lectures on private experience and sense data, not Dada. Dadaism, I think there's another thing. And in this first, it's an introduction to the solution, so to speak, I'd say. And if you go down to the quote from LP, and we go down all the way down, like 5 lines from the bottom of that quote. The words seeing red means a particular experience are senseless unless we can follow them up by namely this pointing, or else they may say experiences as opposed to physical object. But then this is grammar, and this is grammar rules 3 and 4. And the pointing we can also see in a generalized way as an act, something moving. You can even think about it as the movement of the Klein bottle from the inside to the outside and vice versa. And this is strengthened in PI 258. And that's the next quote, short one. The words feeling S means a particular experience are senseless unless we can follow them up by namely this pointing. So the connection between a word and what it is, it's not passive, but it's not only moving either. None of those things are conclusive or exhaustive. Exhaustive, that's the word. But they are there most often. They are present. And now we go into the re-identification reading. And that would be a bit more about that on toothache. Toothache is the example. Go to page 268. And the second paragraph, let's see here. The explanation by Lin, the third line of the second paragraph. The first of the above remarks questions whether the diarist can make sure what the name means through private ostension. The second of the above remarks states that for the diarist to claim that he knows the meaning of the private name, he must be able to use this knowledge in a further case. That is, he must be able to determine whether or not a future sensation is toothache, red, or S. It's all difference. It's not difference in the Saussurean sense. It is difference à la Derrida. They have small differences, varying and making small changes. And for every time there is iteration, the difference becomes the thing that moves. That is the movement. I think that could be pretty clear if we look into how the very function of the inner outer goes. How do we tell inner from outer? It is a small difference. That difference is the force that drags meaning to come by, to make it workable. So inner, outer, the inside and outside of the Klein bottle can also be differences. It's differences that are the most important here. It's stemming from differences. Further down in the second quote, he makes up with the idea of McGinn and what was the name of it? Canfield and Candlish and Risley. In the middle of the quote there is a clarification. It's about 8 lines down, 6, 7. That is, we didn't describe them at all. And that is negating the idea that we can have rule number 2. All bachelors are unmarried men. a description simply won't do. There is no connection then. We have no possibility of knowing if it's right in the future. It simply cannot be done. We go to page 269. The question is asked, finally. And that's in the second quote here from LPE. And I just read the end note. And what, pray tell, I add, is the criterion of the same color coming twice? We cannot have a separate criterion basis. We cannot have a beetle box somewhere that tells us one from the other. It simply will not work. What we need is this movement, pointing, action, the difference. The difference is fueling it. More than welcome to join in.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me do a quick search on this. Let me see. I'm curious about what Google gives on this mysterious lecture. They actually called, I think, data seminars.
Okay, sorry.
I think because I've seen the word earlier. Let me see.
Well, then I stand corrected. Sorry about that, all listeners.
The data seminar is edited by Lickerman, Witkowski. Oh, this was too far. We can see only the first two pages. See what is the first image? There we have. What is this?
Great slide.
Let me see only the first word. Kropper, Wittgenstein. I don't know what the theme is. Let me see.
So
perhaps this is nothing to do with Wittgenstein. Let me see. Wittgenstein it occurs all the time. No, it doesn't have anything to do with Wittgenstein. That was. I don't know actually. I see it might be his reference to his own publication, I think.
no,
So,
I think it's a misspelling there, Kalle.
yes.
I think it's
But
sense
who knows?
data. Sense data doesn't make any sense.
Who knows? Sense data, yes, indeed. Sense data. Okay, sense data. Then we have. You never know. Okay.
Look out, if you Google for something, you will find it. That's one
So I want to show this from this LPE. It was page 12. PDF it's 268. This last phrase. So if people say, I'm on private religion or I have everything in my head, I don't need anything else, then you could point to this phrase. All that remains for you is that you sometimes, without any particular reason, write the word "bread" in your diary.
Yeah.
And so this is a rather sarcastic remark. Or you could even substitute "read" with "God" or without any particular reason, write God. So it becomes actually a dada writing.
But Dada is not far from it. That's why I bought it for a while there when you said Dada is the real word.
I think it was the subconscious of Lean who corrected it to Dada. It should be Dada.
Yeah, maybe.
But what is the solution then? It's easy to criticize something, but to make fun of something, but it's much more difficult to say where is the solution then. And perhaps this is still difficult to point out, but perhaps there is some, this could be part of the solution in this paragraph. Wittgenstein states that in ordinary life one can call an object red by pointing a red sample and say that both the sample and the object are red. In other words, there is a criteria of correctness, it being the sample. It then questions whether the bright iris can ascertain that two bright sensations are both of the red type red, and whether there is criteria of correctness in this case. So it goes one step in the right direction. Let me say here, and because you have two objects which are red, but then on the other hand, this is the blockage, so to say. It goes one step back. But I think this is still part, I think, of the solution. Or do you think it's of course, as you said, Hans,
yeah, it goes in that direction there slowly. There's still some, what could be 15 pages left of the article, but it's going in that direction.
Yeah, so we could say that, as you said, difference. So if you have two red objects at home, they will never ever show the exact same redness.
No.
But if you see many of such similar things, you will say, this is red, I will get a good sensation of what redness is. And as you said, that things get strengthened by experience. So a painter would have much better sense of redness, what redness is, by experience.
Yeah, that's the stage setting, yeah.
And there is no platonic redness, but you see the difference in the doing, perhaps, for the painter, or for us ordinary beings who I can choose a red t-shirt, and it will not be the same redness and another red t-shirt and so forth.
No, platonic redness simply doesn't make any sense at all. It's nonsensical. There needs to be criteria, but there also needs to be some sort of firmness. So not only rule 1, not only pointing, not only rule 2, extension or explanation. All bachelors are unmarried. So we have the grammar instead, and the grammar we will look further into the next lecture. But it's interesting, he makes do with subtle differences. McGinn and the other gang, Hacker, how they made very subtle mistakes. They're not grand mistakes. This is why this paper is so good, because it goes into the very sharpness, the very important things, because they are defining and leads, I would say, to understanding in the end.
Well, I propose that we stop there, Hans.
Yeah, sure. Sounds like a good idea to me. Thank you very much, Kalle, for your comments. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Have a very pleasant morning, day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are.
I sometimes, without any particular reason, write the word red in my diary.
Yes. Very good. I end the recording there.